Here's why you're still anxious, miserable, or feeling like you're on the struggle bus. There are two psychological principles that keep us stuck in anxious patterns, and it's important that you know what they are because knowledge is power. Hi, I'm Dan Candell, the Anxiety Relief Guy, and I help busy professionals beat the battle with stress and anxiety so they can have more breakthroughs and less breakdowns, and I do this by teaching them how to tap into their own subconscious mind. Now let's dive into the first psychological principle. Number one, it's called confirmation bias. Think of confirmation bias like wearing a pair of glasses that only let you see what you already believe. So if you're worried about something, let's say being bad at your job, then you're going to notice every little mistake you make and you're going to think, see, I knew I was bad at this. But at the same time, you might totally miss or ignore all the times you do something well when your boss is happy with your work. It's almost like your brain is collecting evidence that prove you right about your worries, even if there's a lot of proof that you're actually doing fine. I made a post about this on some of my other social media channels, and people went wild. They were like, oh my gosh, that's me. That means there's something wrong with me. I can't believe I knew something was wrong. And I'm like, no. It's called a confirmation bias. It's called a psychological principle for a reason because we all fall victim to this from time to time because it's how we're wired. It's human psychology. It's human behaviors. And we go down this path very easily. Now, let me give you another example of this. I often post inspirational, motivational posts that are meant to help people, just like this video, and I post them all over social media, on my Instagram, my TikTok, my Facebook page, my YouTube channel, my podcast. And these are things that are meant to help and inspire people. Now, occasionally, on occasion, I get the village idiot that comes at me with fire in their eyes. Like, how dare I help people? And they try and contradict what I'm saying, well, because they're pretty negative people. And this one person started going back and forth with me on one of my social media channels. And usually I block these people out because I don't have time for these people. But there's something about the day and there's something about the post. And I'm like, let's battle. I'm like, challenge accepted. And so I start providing all proof and psychological studies and even the link to a whole book of 100 proofs proving what I was talking about that was backed by science and studies. And even though I provided all of these proofs, even though I provided all of these things to prove what I was saying was true because it's nothing to do with mysticism, it's science, it's psychology, it's behaviors, it's human. This person came back at me and she said, I don't care what you share with me. I don't care. All that stuff is baloney because I talked to one of my friends who was a doctor and said that all that stuff is just baloney. And like confirmation bias at its finest. You can provide 100 examples of how something is true, yet as long as that person doesn't want to acknowledge it or doesn't want to admit it or doesn't want to admit that they were wrong, they will just go with the one piece of evidence that they have that they think disproves something. When you become aware of this, and the reason why I said you want to know this because knowledge is power, the reason why I shared this with you is because you can also see this in play with other people as well. So when you become aware of this, you're going to notice other people falling victim of confirmation bias as well. Now, what's one of the ways we fix confirmation bias? One of the ways we fix it is to challenge our internal self-talk, to ask ourselves better questions. One of the ways we can stop falling victim to it is to become aware of it. And when we become aware of it, we can notice if we're falling into that pattern of thinking or that confirmation bias. So now that you know about confirmation bias, you're probably like, what's the second one, Dan? And I'm going to share that with you right now. The second psychological principle that can keep us stuck and cause us to spiral downwards is called negativity bias. Negativity bias is like having a mental magnet that pulls in all the bad stuff and sticks to it, while letting all the good stuff just bounce off. And if you have this bias, you might notice that you remember the one harsh comment someone made about a presentation more than all the compliments and positive feedback that you received. It's like your brain is tuned in to the channel that only broadcasts the bad news, making you feel anxious because it seems like the bad stuff is everywhere, even when there's plenty of good stuff happening too. Both of these biases can make anxiety feel worse because they skew your view of the world. It's like looking through a lens that magnifies fear, worries, and shrinking down everything that could make you feel better. Recognizing these biases when they're at play can help you take off those glasses, turn off that magnet so that way you can see things in a more balanced and healthy way. Now, if you fall victim to one of these biases or both of them, does it mean there's something wrong with you? No, it does not. It means that you are human. You're a real person. Congratulations, or sorry. However, this is what happens. We are wired to think this way. And why are we wired to think this way with confirmation and negativity bias? The reason why we're wired to think and feel this way is because, number one, we don't like to be wrong about things. When we're wrong, it can cause us to feel ashamed. It can cause us to feel embarrassed. And that's why we often fall victim of confirmation bias, because we want to prove what we think to be true instead of challenging our belief systems. Now, it's actually more difficult to challenge your belief systems than it is to just accept something about yourself. And we often hear about self-acceptance. And yes, I totally agree with self-acceptance. However, we don't want to accept the anxiety. We don't want to accept that limiting mindset. We want to accept ourselves and our journey to improve ourselves, but we don't always want to accept our problems or limiting belief systems because that can keep us stuck. Why do we fall victim to negativity bias? Well, again, it's because our mind is just wired that way. Back into the days of being cavemen and cavewomen and looking around, we're constantly scanning for problems to keep ourselves safe. So we became wired to see the more negative things, not to thrive and to grow, but to survive the day. The goal used to be to survive. And now the goal is not just to survive each day, but it's also to grow and thrive for most of us, or it should be. And sometimes we get caught in these mental traps and it causes us to spiral downwards. And again, just by knowing these can help you get off that struggle bus, and it can help you live life on your own terms, as I said, because knowledge is power. Speaking of power, you deserve to have power over the anxiety. You deserve to have power over yourself. You deserve to live life on your terms. So many people reach out to me every single day and they're like, Dan, I just feel stuck. I feel like I'm being confined in this little shell of anxiety. And it really does cause your life to shrink, where it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Then what happens? We start to avoid things. As our life gets smaller, we start to get frustrated with ourselves, and eventually it turns into regret. The last thing you want to have when you're reflecting back over your life is regret. So how do you prevent that from happening? How do you have more breakthroughs than breakdowns? How do you gain control over the anxiety, the stress, the overwhelm, so that way you can finally break up with the anxiety and your relationship with the limiting anxiety, so you live life on your own terms, so you gain control. So you are in control of your own decisions, of your own actions, of your own responses. One of the very first steps is to take action with something that can help, that is solution-based. And the other step is to rework your subconscious mind, rewire your subconscious mind. And that's my specialty. That's exactly what I help people do. How do I help people do this? Well, every once in a while, I open up a cohort. And the cohort, I only take 20 people into this cohort. And this is for people who want to take action. It's for people who don't want to go to years of therapy, who don't want to take mind-altering medications, who are sick and tired of just being told, just breathe through it, everything will be okay. It's not going to be okay if you don't take action and if you don't take the right action. Now, since I have so many people reaching out to me, these spots go really fast in my cohort. Like I said, I can only take on 20 people, and we do allow a very small amount of those people to work with me privately. So the first 10 people that get in work with me privately. Because of this, we want to make sure we are working with the right people, and we want to make sure that people we're working with are committed. So how do you do this? How do you join the cohort? If you are like, Dan, I need this, I want this, I'm ready to go, how do I join? All you have to do is fill out a brief application. So there's a link below this video or in the description of this video, and that link will bring you to a description of what I do in the cohort, who I help, and who this might not be good for as well. You review that whole page. If it sounds good, you fill out the application. I'll review the application, and sometimes either myself or someone from my team will reach out to you to ask you a few more questions just to make sure this is the right approach for you. There's no commitment whatsoever. Just filling out the application doesn't mean, oh, I have to do this. It just means you're raising your hand and say, hey, I want you to consider me. What do I have to do? That's it. So all you have to do is just take that action, click the link around this video that will give you the details so you can start taking action, so you can live life on your own terms, so you can be a part of the community that I've helped of thousands and thousands of people. With that said, my friends, as always, be well, do good, be true to who you are, happy healing, and remember, you don't have to be a victim of confirmation bias. You don't have to be a victim of negativity bias. Once you know about it, you can start interrupting those patterns because knowledge is power. See you soon. Thanks for joining me on the Anxiety Relief Revolution. Make sure you follow me on TikTok at Anxiety Relief Guy and on Instagram at Dan Candell. If you watch this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, comment, and hit that like button. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, make sure you subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps me help you and help more people. And as always, be well, do good, and be true to who you are.